Pop quiz. Which country consumes the second most tacos per capita behind Mexico? For each country I list, raise your hand for the one you think it is. A, France. B, Sweden. C, Norway. Or D, the United States. According to the Suburban Times, it's Norway. For those of you that said Norway, you're correct. Don't feel bad if you got this wrong. This was as surprising to me as it might be to you until this past summer when my Norwegian cousins decided it was essential for me to become a true Norwegian. Obviously, tacos are what they started with. Then I endured a very long, very passionate rant about how Norwegians make the best chocolates and are the best at the Winter Olympics. While this may be biased, I mean, come on, my cousins remained excited to share their culture with me. Unfortunately, more and more people seem ready to jump at attacking someone for wearing a cultural dress, such as a chi pao, or cooking an ethnic dish out of their interest in their culture. If my white dad posted on TikTok the many ways he romanced my mom, based on what I've seen, I'm sure he'd be hit with a load of attacks on his inability to participate in Chinese culture. But why can't he? He cooked kung pao chicken when he first met my grandparents. He's basically Chinese now. I'm just kidding, of course, but true immersion, understanding, and participation in other cultures should not be attacked. Society's attitude around culture has devolved into readily shaming and canceling others. To clarify, since 2019, canceling is a new term that has grown exponentially in popularity. Merriam-Webster defines it, cancel culture, as the act or tendency of engaging in mass canceling as a way of expressing disapproval and exerting social pressure, but has since devolved into a quick way to dismiss and cyberbully others. By perpetuating such an environment, we inadvertently limit our ability for enriching experiences, fostering inclusivity, and cultivating a more sweet-toned coexistence amongst diverse cultures. Today, we'll be making a taco. First, we'll make our tortilla, not with flour, but with our current understanding of cultural appropriation. Then we'll load up the taco with the do's and don'ts of cultural interaction. And lastly, we'll top our taco off with some sauce. That'll be the finishing touch of cultural integration. Now, we have a cultural appreciation taco. Watching movies with my family was huge growing up. And if 3.5 hours of Fiddler on the Roof taught me anything, it's tradition. I've spent my whole life sampling and sharing different cultures and traditions. My Israeli friends taught me traditional Jewish Shabbat dinners, something completely foreign to my unorthodox Jewish self. And this was extremely important to me, as it taught me how to think about my interactions. And through these values, I taught my friends how to hold chopsticks properly and shared my holidays through delicacies like mooncakes or yuebing. While we're in a growing age of multiculturalism, an unpreventable result of globalization, the discussion around cultures is unfortunately becoming one of isolationism and exclusion. When I was younger, I would have loved to have seen more girls think that the clothes I wore for Chinese New Year were stylish and cool. And now, more and more people seem to be afraid to even approach new cultures out of fear of being canceled. Scroll through social media. You know what we'll notice? When a white girl wears a sari or a chi pao, the comments explode with immediate claims of racism. Just as Kazaya Dom, a high school student who wore a Chinese cheongsam dress to her prom in 2018 was berated with comments telling her she was appropriating Chinese culture. But Dom told Insider that she bought the dress from a Salt Lake City, Utah thrift store because she thought it was beautiful and admired the beauty of the culture. I remember seeing this TikTok myself, actually, thinking it was creative and unique that she chose to wear something from Chinese culture. However, as a result of the attack, Kazaya Dom now lives her life with a trail of people calling her a racist and a bigot. And how does one truly know one's intent? I mean, if she wore it to her prom, she must think that it's a pretty dress and that we, Chinese, have good style, which personally I can attest to. This is only one random example, one random girl picked from countless others. Lives are being made miserable. And limiting this discussion to immediate cancellation is detrimental to all cultures and races. By expanding this discussion beyond immediate cancellation, it allows for a more in-depth exploration of racial and cultural considerations. It allows us to delve into the complexities, historical context, and potential unintended consequences of such actions. When we practice things like harmful cancellation, we limit engagement with our past. A French philosopher, Louis Althusser, theorized that practice refers to the ways an individual and groups interact with the structures of society, social, economic, cultural, etc. When we practice things like intolerance and canceling, we limit engagement with society as a whole. When we practice things like acceptance and tolerance, however, we can not only actively engage with, but become a part of the culture. You can look at it through the lens of multiculturalism and interculturality. Spring Institute defines multiculturalism as a society that contains several cultural or ethnic groups. People live alongside one another, but each cultural group does not necessarily have engaging interactions with each other, which means it does not have to be positive interaction. Spring Institute also defines interculturality as communities in which there is a deep understanding and respect for all cultures. Intercultural communication focuses on the mutual exchange of ideas and the development of deep relationships. In an intercultural society, no one is left unchanged because everyone learns from one another. My parents are an example of interculturality. If we look back to Althusser, positive engagement with culture has allowed for culture to become a part of my parents and them a part of the culture. Cultural appreciation is intercultural communication, and that starts with a dialogue. Keziah Dom and so many others should have the opportunity to have a discussion about their actions before they're attacked or canceled. Okay, so we've gone through the foundation of our taco, the tortilla of cultural appropriation. Let's let that sit as we prepare our toppings. What are the do's and don'ts of cultural interaction? A quote in a Los Angeles Times opinion piece published in July 2021 from a high school student near my hometown, Irvine, emphasizes the nuances and impacts of cultural appropriation. They explain that it can be difficult to discern whether someone is genuinely appreciating a culture or using stereotypes to mock it, especially when people online are quick to demand apologies. Unfortunately, as this continues, more and more people realize that interacting with new cultures and experiences will only result in them suffering from the public. Essentially, this leads to little to no one wanting to experience different cultures and traditions, which is necessary for all groups to understand and acknowledge each other. A fun way I like to share my culture is through cooking dishes that aren't necessarily the most common in Western cuisine, or at least my friends' understanding of food. Dishes like pig ear and pig feet and tea eggs instead of hard-boiled eggs are usually my go-to, especially pig feet. It's delicious, and the skin on the feet is good for your skin, so 2-in-1 benefit. I love seeing my friends' willingness to try different foods outside of their cultures and experience it with me. But unfortunately, sometimes the cultural displays we see aren't authentic and distort our view of the world around us. What do I mean? Take fake art. A hot topic recently is fake Indigenous artwork no longer coming from the Indigenous communities. According to the Arts Law Centre of Australia, about 80% of the pieces marketed to tourists are fake. While statistics like that aren't available for Canada, about an Indigenous artist from the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Jay Soleil, thinks that the numbers are even higher, somewhere around 100%. It becomes problematic when these elements are taken out of their original cultural context and used for various purposes, including commercial gain, without true understanding or respect for their significance. This is one of the many nuances where cultural appreciation is also supporting the small businesses from those cultures, rather than their generic, inauthentic counterpart. When we look towards the discussion of cultural appreciation, that comes with actually participating in culture. When we hear how Indigenous tribes have spoken out on how they want their feedback to be received, it is a part of this dialogue to listen to that feedback. Such as when Soleil explains, if you want to sell Indigenous art, that's great, but sell authentic art, and we can help point you in the right direction. Today, we merely got a taste of the depth that accompanies cultural understanding. This talk is merely an appetizer in the buffet that is interculturality. It marks the beginning of an important discussion that must be had sincerely. Every culture I've interacted with has had an impact on who I am today. Every person, food, culture we've experienced with has an impact on who we are. While part of my personal identity is the fact that I'm Chinese, Jewish, and Norwegian, another part is that I really like tacos. Not Norwegian tacos, Mexican tacos. That appreciation for Mexican cuisine makes it a part of my identity as well. I've learned to truly embrace this idea when I moved to Miami. I always knew I was going to learn to speak Spanish and hopefully be fluent one day, but it truly felt attainable once I moved here. I got a better understanding of many South American cultures, had my first empanada and tequeño, they're delicious, and the mindset that people can only participate in the cultures originally born to is not productive, nor is it even sustainable. Culture isn't simply a matter of inclusivity. It's also an opportunity to learn, live, and experience different cultures and traditions. Participating in culture is one of the great privileges we have. When we limit and even harm ourselves from that discussion, we hurt our ability to become a part of other cultures. Rather than isolate ourselves, let's be tacos, a shell for a diversity of flavors integrating our global human experience. Thank you.